Hi, I'm Dave Warzel, and you're watching PHTV4, Ask the Attorney. And we're here with Eileen Curlin-Walsh from Curlin-Walsh Law in Palos Heights. And we get a great opportunity here to kind of take a look at a legal issue or situation and get some insight on how to maybe handle it. And today we're actually going to take a look at planning solutions for blended families, right?
Absolutely.
Again, this is probably one of those things. I feel like every family is going to see this. I mean, whether it's a brother, sister, friends, you're going to bump. You know people who are in this situation. Do you want to talk about first, what is a blended family?
What is a blended family? A blended family is a family, a couple who get together, maybe later in life, maybe after a divorce, maybe after their loved one has passed away, and find a new opportunity at romance and companionship. And I love, Dave, that here in the US this is very common, a lot more common than in Ireland or in Europe. So we have these marvelous opportunities for a second or third chance at romance, to have companionship in our later decades. But blended families do come with some very specific legal challenges. And that is what we're going to discuss today.
Okay, and as you're saying that, I can even run some of these scenarios in my head, because you can be talking about, well, they got divorced, but maybe they had kids with their previous marriage, and now you've got two sets of kids coming together, or they have children, and now you've got the our children thing, right? You mentioned earlier.
Absolutely.
And then the different ages of the children, where these people are at in their lives. It sounds like there's a lot to sort through here. Can you talk about what are some of the potential either challenges or problems or situations or dangerous kind of things we need to be careful of here?
Absolutely. So when the couple get together, let's say that it's maybe in their 60s and they have children from their previous relationships. So those children are grown now, and there may be just a little suspicion of the marriage. So there may be perhaps some resentment if mom has recently passed away, or it's not been that many years that now dad's remarrying or that mom's remarrying. So there may be a little bit of suspicion to begin with, plus the fear, and I think this is real and many families experience it, of, is this person marrying my parent for their money, or even if they're not, is there a possibility that the family money now, which mom who's passed away would never have intended to go to this new spouse's family? So the suspicions are there may be a little bit of resentment, so it can be a minefield for potential families. And what the couple who have just fallen in love with each other want more than anything is for their families to accept it. And if we plan properly for the future of that relationship, then I think we can calm some of those fears, we can get rid of those suspicions, and we give this new blended family an opportunity for real happiness together.
Yeah, and I would imagine each one of these situations where they might be similar, they're also going to be kind of very unique to that family or that couple, their children, which is going to create a lot of, like, the potential minefield. You're going to have to adapt to each one of those. I know, we were talking earlier, you mentioned people using like a prenup.
Yes.
How that impacts this, but that doesn't necessarily solve or help either, right?
That's absolutely right, Dave. And a lot of people, when the new couple are getting together, get good legal advice as well as family advice, get a prenup. Be sure there's a prenup in place. And prenuptials, of course, are a wonderful planning tool, but the prenuptial agreement is really safety net in case there is a dissolution. The prenuptial agreement is not a way to make sure that what a parent came into the relationship with is going to automatically go to their children, because that prenup often is intended to cover the first 2, 5, 10 years. When those years are up and we now have a robust relationship that we believe is going to last forever, we go past prenuptial planning to estate planning. And if the couple now have had 15, 20 years of happiness together, they do want to provide for each other. However, they also want anything that's left of their estate upon their death to go to their children. So if the couple came, joined their assets together, often they'll sell they'll sell their individual homes and maybe buy a home together, they will intend those assets to be used by the spouse. They don't want the spouse being put out of a home or anything like that, but they also don't want their own children to not have a piece of that inheritance. And if we don't plan properly, it can come down to that unfortunate term, last man standing. Whichever the spouse survives, if they have control of all the blended assets, there's a much greater chance of those assets now going to either the children of the surviving spouse, especially if those relationships never got better, or, and this happens too, what if we have another spouse come into the picture? Now we have another set of children that there's a possibility that these assets could go to. So what couples will often come to my office having done which they believe, in addition to the prenup, has taken care of this situation, is put their spouse on as the primary beneficiary on their accounts and their children. So hubby puts his new wife, then his children from his first marriage on his retirement plan, and mom does the same. However, primary beneficiary, whichever spouse survives, has that entire retirement account. That contingent distribution falls away. So we really haven't put a safety net of our children in there. So what we have to do is plan in such a way that after the death of the first spouse, the plan cannot be changed or the assets cannot be directed in any way other than the first spouse would have wanted.
You know, as you're going through that list of scenarios or situations, I'm thinking anybody who is in a blended family situation should see an attorney and make sure, like, not assume that, well, I had a prenup or maybe I had a will or whatever the situation was. No, this is a new thing here, and there's a lot to deal with. Now, I came across a term, and I'm not sure it applies or it helps in this situation, a beneficiary designation for somebody. How does that apply, or how does that help maybe? I'm not sure.
So Dave, when we're talking about estate planning, we talk about beneficiary designation, and that is that we put each other, on many of our accounts, we can put in beneficiaries, and that prevents either will or trust planning. But a beneficiary designation is limited in what it can do. And that's why just naming your spouse and then the children from your first relationship as beneficiaries isn't sufficient. So what we really need to do is get to trust planning. All roads lead to trust planning. So if that couple plan together, and it's wonderful if we can do this while the marriage is still very healthy and they are physically healthy, because we don't know which one is going to be the first to pass away. And I'll tell you something, Dave, also when you say every blended family should see an attorney, often couples come to my office and they've not had this conversation with each other. It's sensitive. It's very sensitive. Because the couple realize how precious this chance at happiness they have is together. They don't want to bring up anything that might be a little uncomfortable. And there's nothing less comfortable than talking about the what ifs. And if it's brought up, it might sound that the spouse who brings it up is being suspicious of the other. So what I tell my clients is, I'm here to be the one to make sure that your children, regardless of the order of your deaths, is taken care of. So no one is accusing each other of anything. I'm the one that has seen enough difficult family situations to know that if we plan this way, there's much greater chance of happiness. And let me tell you something else that's a big part of this, Dave. Often when a couple get together and they have children from previous relationships, you're never going to probably be as fond of your new spouse's children as you are of your own. Our children are, of course, the object of our bounty. There's a bond there that nothing can be similar to, but those grandchildren. When grandchildren start being born, the new spouse is every bit as fond of those darling babies as the true grandparent is. So another good reason for this kind of planning is so that after the death of the first spouse, there isn't family disharmony, there is no longer a relationship between the spouse and the children of the first spouse to die. and then the grandchildren being taken away, because that leads to, and pets too. I have seen people really upset because the pets that they've grown very fond of have been taken away because of these family situations. So there's so many good reasons, as well as we all want harmony. No one wants to spend a life of resentment, and no one wants to spend a lot of money in court challenging estate planning. So there's a lot of good reasons to get good planning done so that none of that has to happen.
I think you've made it clear. In my head, I'm thinking about how difficult, like I've seen people go through a divorce and how, challenging that can be is maybe a soft or gentle word for what I've seen some people go through. Or, the other tragedy, a spouse passes, And at that point in your life, to think that you're going to add in this other problem because it hasn't been planned for, like you said, to deal with the uncomfortable part of dealing with the what ifs, maybe that little bit of uncomfort at that moment is worth the peace of mind that later, you don't have to worry about. So we're talking about the solutions, it sounds like. I don't know if you want to elaborate or there are other areas you want to address in there in terms of, all right, yes, we're going to see the attorney, we're a blended family now. Are there other solutions or things we should be aware of that speak to this situation?
Well, let's talk about the kind of trust planning that are going to avoid the problems that we have been talking about. And a simple will is not going to do it. And as we said before, beneficiary designations is not going to do it. So what the couple need to do is plan through trusts. Now, it could very well be that the main asset they have is their home. If that's the case, maybe, as I said before, each of the couple sold their own home, bought this home together. It truly was a blending of their assets. And they would want their spouse to live there forever if they're the one to die first, but they still want their share to go to their family. So we might just do a simple trust because that's the asset that is at stake. We might do a simple trust for the home. Each of them own their 1/2 share, not joint tenancy, not last man surviving. They each would own a divided 1/2 share, and we would give each of the couples a life estate in the share of the first to die, meaning that upon the death of the first to die, the spouse who owns the surviving spouse owns the other half, can own that for the rest of his life. If it's a wife who passes, he's got a life estate, which is like a lifetime tenancy in the other half, which means he can't be forced to sell by the kind of beneficiaries of the other half. Now, if the partner who's left wants to move on, marry again, that's fine. They'll have to leave the property, sell the property, relinquish the life estate, and then they get their half. The predeceased spouse get their half. Now, often we have more than just the home. So we talked a couple of weeks ago when we did the show on estate planning about doing a trust and having that trust be the treasure chest for all of the assets. So blended family planning is very similar. And if we have that nice relationship where we want the spouse to have control, to have use of all the assets, we can set it up that way, but it can't be changed upon the death of the first to die. And there are some restrictions on the use of those funds. And once again, we bring in the good old prenup. So if the surviving spouse has control of the assets, use of the assets, they can only do that if they have not remarried. If they do remarry, they have to have a really robust prenup that is not going to interfere with this trust, in which case then they can. If they don't agree to do that, then they no longer can be in control of those funds, give up the use of them, and give up the control of them. So this kind of planning, well done, and that cannot be abandoned if there is a new relationship, can mean that everyone is protected all the way throughout. So that's one way of doing this planning.
When you added that, then they remarry, I thought we'd solve the problem. Then I'm like, oh no, there's another problem here to deal with, to manage. It sounds like, and maybe you want to speak to this too, the outcome then of this type of planning, it seems like we're going to avoid some major problems or headaches down the road, right? I mean, Can you talk about the general outcome? Like everything should be okay. What could people expect, I guess?
Well, the outcome is that nothing changed. Remember, we don't know who's going to pass away first. And now the outcome for the couple is a sense of relief because they know that their own children are going to be taken care of regardless. The children, I encourage them, the knowledge being shared with them that this planning has been done. Now, they would have been encouraged in a prenup, perhaps there was one. Let them know that now we have done the estate planning and that children from the both sides have been protected. Then they have relief, they have less resentment, and then the family is much more likely to have those close relationships that we cherish, particularly as we grow older and we become a little bit less able and our circle closes in to be able to have families and Thanksgiving and Christmases and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren all together is one of the most successful positive outcomes of this kind of planning, is that the family can remain harmonious, secure in the knowledge that everybody's heritage and legacy is preserved.
It's everything's being managed in a way that it's okay. It's handled, right?
Absolutely.
We're not going to have to fight it out or argue our way through, or
And that fighting it out, David, is the last positive outcome. That we know that we're not going to end up with will contests, trust contests, and that can cost tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So not only have we the loss of all those family relationships, but we have the possibility of all the money that is available being spent in litigation.
Yeah.
And no one wants that outcome.
Right. So preserve those assets, preserve the relationships, and preserve our health probably too in the process, right?
Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely.
Eileen, thank you very much. I mean, I knew it was an issue, and then it felt very, I don't want to say convoluted, but there's a lot of threads here to pull on, and I think you sorted through it in a way that makes it clear. Get an attorney, prenup or not, will or not, whatever, and deal with this special situation, right?
Deal with it head on, have the hard conversations, and there will be long-term premium on getting that done.
Good. I feel a little better.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Eileen. I'm Dave Wurzel, and you've been watching Ask the Attorney with Eileen Curlin Walsh, and we've been discussing planning solutions for blended families. Thank you for watching.